so there's no echoing, so thank you for that. And otherwise, we are going to get started. Does anyone have any questions before I get started?
So I'll check the comments here. It looks like everyone's good. Looks like we are good to go.
Good to go. All right. So we have some familiar faces here. Kathy, this is my husband and myself. We were at a ski lodge and we were very happy. And I'll just leave it at that. How about Kathy? What would you like to share about your beautiful photo?
Oh, this is just me and my granddaughter having fun. This is actually how we communicate now. I'm surprised anyone recognizes me without all the goofiness on my face. These days, we're always putting hats on each other and all that funny stuff. Now that we're communicating just on our FaceTime.
Yes, yes, yes. And Liz, what would you like to say about your photo before we move to the next slide?
Sure, yeah. This is my husband. We've been married for over 20 years, and he's a pilot. So we've had kind of a front row seat to all of this interestingness going on in the world. But this picture was taken, I was going, he was coming, and so we have our favorite coffee shop in the airport where we meet for coffee.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's a little bit about us. So today this is our week 5, and we've been using this kind of format. So for those of you who are new, welcome. And again, for those of you who've been with us, you kind of will get the knack of it. We're going to do we did our opening remarks. We're going to do a little bit of a report from the field. These are things that we're hearing from our companies and our colleagues about what's going on during this unprecedented 100% work from home time. We're going to share some best practices. We're going to ask you to please share with us and share information. You can do that through the chat. You can do that by raising your hand. You can do that by unmuting. We want to hear from you, and we'll also provide you with some resources. So again, very informal, and it's a nice small group, and we are going to kick off. So first, what I'd like to ask everyone to do, and I will give you the ability to do so, is how are you faring? Pantry stocked, we good on that? Are we having some setbacks? Making headway, getting into a groove. So if you want to just quickly, you can use your pen on the drawing tool and give us a little sense of how you're doing. Okay, we're getting some positive stuff here. All right, good.
Pantry stock, that's good. My pantry is getting depleted. I, co-located in my kitchen. It's with my kitchen. It's way too convenient.
All right. So good. It's nice to see people are finding their way through this process. So I will erase, and I will one more time, everybody. Thanks for your patience on that. Oh my gosh.
Just click on the slide and then hit your down.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, so we try to be fancy, and that's what happened. So what's our report today? First of all, we all have spring break. So if we thought, not all of us, I'm sure we have a staggered spring break if you have kids. So of course, if you had kids that were learning virtually and now they're home without structure, good luck for that. So I just had to put that out there for the pain that any of us are feeling. Engagement is a topic we're hearing a lot about. How do you keep people engaged when you can't see them, and how is this becoming increasingly not something that some companies thought this was a soft topic when everybody was in the office? Well, now we are hearing this is a big challenge and something companies are starting to invest in, and Liz is going to talk to that a bit. We're going to talk a little bit about change and change management. Again, unprecedented change. So Randy Kesterson is on the line. He's going to give us some flavor of that. Company preparedness and planning. I think, we're out of the stage of let's, put out tips for meetings and some of the basics. It's now about how are we preparing and planning for the next stage, and Kathy Ketcher is going to give us some good pointers on that. And then if there's time, I will share a bit on remote work issues to be aware of and address, given that these remote work issues in normal times maybe aren't so important or maybe are addressed, but when you're home, they become very real. So Liz, would love to hear from you on engagement. Please take it away.
Yes, thank you. So before I dive into some of these specifics, I wanted to just ask a question. And, we talk a lot about the acronym B2B and B2C. And a new acronym that's been used a lot more is H2H. And it's this concept of human to human. And part of what's happening is these amazing stories that are rising to the surface about how all of this has really leveled the playing field and made it about the fact that we're human beings and we're interacting on it at an H to H level. So I'm just curious, before I dive in on some of these bullets, does anyone have a story? And you can just speak up or share in the chat about where you've seen the situation kind of level the playing field in terms of we're just interacting human to human.
This is Kathy. I'll just share some of the things that I've seen in my clients, which is heartening. I don't know how long it'll last or where it'll go, but certainly the executive leadership inside the larger organizations that I'm working with are doing videos of themselves in their home, being super transparent about their day, about their routine, about how they're coping. So they're really opening, revealing a human element. And these are, many of these are executives that were in a suite, that they were kind of in the tower, because that's how the culture was. And now they're kind of coming down and opening up. And I was on with a large pharmaceutical yesterday, same thing, leadership really opening up. So I love seeing this. And I hope that we stay a little bit more flat like this. I love it. It really does stabilize and equalize our experience. And I'd love to hear anyone else out there, whether you are with a large company or small company or whatever, but what are you seeing too? You can go ahead and unmute or go ahead.
Somebody has to have go ahead.
We're getting, groceries delivered or pick up groceries. And I have, I'm kind of a digital person, so I've done this for a while, but recently got my groceries and the next day I got a call and they said, we shorted you a bag. And I'm like, oh, I just thought I missed those things. And they said, she was so patient and so kind and so connecting. And she said, well, I'd like to credit you. And I'm like, well, see, that's the trouble, because where's my purse when you're, who knows where your purse is at? You don't need it when you're home. And so I'm running around the house and just so nice with me. And in this little moment, that human to human moment, as you say, Liz, it just made such a difference. And as busy as their business is right now, to do that, I mean, it's brings such meaning.
Great story. And how that impacted your day.
It did. It really just did.
Wonderful. Does anyone have one more story?
I can just say that I know a few people on the line I see from different companies, and I've seen some great C-suite conversations, and as you said, Kathy, showing their real selves and being a bit more informal and transparent. So that's definitely what I'm seeing as well, and it's a great opportunity to do that in an authentic way. So you don't want to be too informal or say things you normally wouldn't say, but to say them in a way that, to your point, are more human and more transparent, and that reach the hearts and minds of people right now when they are distracted and dealing with so much. So absolutely.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that we know from a statistic perspective that engagement drives top and bottom line. We know this, right? And conversations happen all the time across companies. How do we engage employees? And I think what is so wonderful that in the midst of all of this, similar to what I was saying earlier, is that engagement really starts at that H2H level, right? The human to human level. And so to my first bullet there, this is really, when I talk about engagement with my clients, it's really about how are you genuinely trying to understand your team and your individual employees and what they are facing, what they're looking at every day, what's on their plate. And so some of what this has required, I think, is a level of inquiry around how is it going at home? Kathy, you brought up a great question on last week's webinar. Instead of what are you doing, how are you doing? So it's shifted that question. And I think bringing the inquiry to a level of understanding employees on an individual level, and this is a lot about what I talk about, is there's the vision, mission, core values of the organization as a whole, and there's also the individual employee. And so how do we can't necessarily start there and stop there with looking at the individual employee, but how do we use that to help support the mission, vision, core values, goals, strategies that the company is moving towards. So starting with regular inquiry and being empathetic about, okay, there's some employees that they love working from home. This is the greatest thing that's happened, actually. And there are some employees that this is the hardest thing that's ever happened. And so really understanding where's my team at, getting that pulse, and that it's okay for an employee to say, you know what, I'm loving this. This is going really well for me. I have, you know, a couple of people that I've talked with at clients that they don't want to share this with their boss, but they're saying, you know, this has been the best thing for me. I'm so productive. And my boss and I are going to have some really hard conversations about how productive I've been and why do I have to still keep going into the office. On the other hand, some employees, this is really hard for them. They are trying to be parent, teacher, and employee, all in the same space, all in the same home, and it's really challenging. I think also asking things like, when do you work best? So really opening up that discussion around, you know, for me personally, I work best at between 4 and 6 a.m. And I would have no problem if my team sent me a text at 5 in the morning. Now that's obviously not for everyone. So understanding when does your team work best? And then, you know, I talk about how every interaction is an experience. So when you are interacting with your team and employees, whether you text them or you email them or all of that is always an experience. And so how do we align the experiences that we're giving our employees to how they are individually motivated? And I talk about this a lot too, is really understanding your employees' motivation. And there are lots of different assessments out there and things. I use an assessment in my work called MDNA, and it shows how your employees individually are motivated. If we understand motivation, we can engage, we can give them a great experience. If we give them a great experience, it automatically drives to engagement. So another thing that in these regular inquiries that we talk a lot about is asking your team, what is 3 things? What is one thing you're going to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing? And I think that level of questioning takes on a whole nother level of significance when we're in these times, because there are things that we need to stop doing. You know, we may be under this, we need to start doing, we need to figure this out, we need to be motivated, all this, but there are also some things that we need to stop doing as well. And so having those kinds of conversations with the team is really important. The next thing I talk about in terms of roundtables is there is a certain portion of your team, I've read somewhere it's about 2 to 3% that fall into this innovator category. And they might actually be enjoying a level of this, right? The innovators want to look at different ways of doing things. And this has created a level of chaos that they want to come back to and look at. And so when you look at weekly roundtables, identifying who are those innovators on your team that can come to the table and really start thinking about different ways of doing things. And this is maybe, you know, one of those things that you need to start doing, because we've been in a lot of just, how do we stop the water from going out? How do we just mitigate what's going on? And I think that there's a place where if you can find the innovators in your organization and bring them to the table and say, okay, these are our greatest challenges right now. How would you handle this? And approach it from an innovation perspective. New ways to recognize success. This goes back to my earlier comment about not one shoe fits all. So how do we understand how our employees are motivated and how do we recognize them based on that. So for example, there may be some employees, they do not want to be recognized in front of the entire team. They would rather have a one-on-one email or something sent to their home that's just specifically for them. Others, they really enjoy being recognized in front of their team. And so understanding where employees fall with that. I'm going to come back to upskilling and hand over to Kathy at that point. But one thing that is, as I'm looking at all of this in an engagement, the one thing that keeps rising to the top is that habits are so key. So what are the habits and how can we get to the point that and it doesn't mean we institute 10 habits. What is the one habit that we can encourage employees in our team to say, I'm going to work on this for the next 30 days? And whether that be getting up from their desk regularly, whether that be walking regularly, getting up early, shifting to work when works best for them. And there's a great book by this called Essentialism. It's by Greg McGowan, I believe. And he talks about, like, in this time, streamlining and simplifying is everything. And so how are we setting up habits, really choosing habits where we're focused in on simplifying and streamlining? And it kind of can go against where we have this kind of innate reaction to say, I need to do more, I need to do more, I need to do more. And in actuality, we need to do less. And so how do we streamline and simplify and really give our employees, our team, the power to say, this is what I am going to just eliminate for now, and I'm really going to focus on these one or two things. So upskilling is also really important. Kathy, I know that this is one of your areas of expertise. I'll hand it over to you to talk more about the upskilling.
Yeah, Liz, I'm going to actually grab that one. We're saving Kathy for a special place in this presentation, so I'll grab this. And Liz, thank you so much for the engagement. A couple of things I'd like to build on before we do a quick upskilling and move to the next piece. Is that recognition, as we all know, is, like, as Liz beautifully said, is so personal. But recognition, when you don't have the normal ways of recognizing, you might not have the budget now to recognize your people the way you did. Face-to-face recognition, like events and conferences, is very big, especially in the sales arena. So I'm hearing companies talk about recognition as it needs to be reinvented, and not only just now, but when we get back. I talked to a CEO the other day, and he said he does not believe that conferences and events are going to be the same level of spend as they were pre-COVID-19, because people have figured out ways to use their video conferencing and to use other ways of keeping people incented and connected. So, and I also think we're going to learn from the millennials and the Gen Zs, you know, how are they feeling recognized? So absolutely, I think recognition is going to be take a different form. I think we're going to get informed through the generations and through the technology, and the budgets I do believe are going to be shifting. If I could also, one of the things I would like to say before we move, does anyone have any innovative or different ways that they've been virtually recognizing their people during these last few weeks? We'd love to hear from you by chat or if you'd unmute. Okay. We will then move to upskilling, and this is another big topic that we're hearing. We're hearing that companies, again, without the ability to travel and to do the face-to-face, they are encouraging a lot of online upskilling and practice management. And also for employees who are not at capacity, this is an opportunity to redirect their time and efforts to learning and growing within the organization. So Kathy and I have seen a lot of investment in virtual management courses. Kathy delivers these all the time. We do them regularly for companies who, again, are looking at leadership and where and how can we be helping them upskill their leaders. And I'll give a shout out to Pan American Life on the line. They have been seeing this as an important time, an opportunity to spend time and effort in upskilling their leadership, knowing that they're captive, that they can really mandate them to come because, hey, you know, we can really get people to want to make the time to do this because everybody's remote, and to use it as an opportunity, not just for leadership upskilling, but remote management leadership upskilling. So shout out to you. And I know we have Penn Mutual on the line and Guardian on the line, and they've made some strong investments on their leadership too. So that's awesome to see and hear. So I will now move us. Randy, I know that you have only a few minutes for us. We appreciate you giving them to us. If you'd like to spend a few minutes on change and change management, however you want to take this, and I'll move the slides for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. Thanks, Meryl. I'm new to the FlexPaths team, so thanks for allowing me to spend a few minutes to talk about change. And this is a real passion for me. I spent most of my career in leadership roles in industry, but interspersed in there, I consulted in change and change management for about 7 years with some large and medium and small organizations really around the world. I want to start with just talking about change. Is there anybody on the call today who has not experienced significant change? If so, please explain how you did it.
Yeah.
But now, seriously, does anyone have a story about change regarding their organization they'd like to share? What happened and what did you do to deal with it?
We have a quiet group today, Randy.
This is Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
I can't be quiet for long. So I have a very good story about change. So as part of the change management strategy for a project that's ongoing, we had planned focus groups. We're at the initial parts of the design, so we wanted to understand the group's expectations for the space and all of that. So we had this plan for like probably 4 weeks in advance. And then at the last minute, that was exactly the week when we all were mandated to work from home. So we scrambled to change these focus groups to a virtual format. As something I had never done. And it actually worked pretty well.
Very good.
Everyone was, very open, very receptive. Like, that was a huge change for all of us.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. So, Meryl, could you go to the next slide?
Sure. And Alex is from Merck, so everybody knows that's the organization she's with. Okay.
Alex. So, McKinsey published something recently I found to be pretty interesting, where it's different time horizons we need to be thinking about right now. So when I talk to my clients, what I find is most of them are in horizon 1 and 2. Haven't found anyone yet that's spending much time talking about horizon 3, which is a return to business, to scale things. I think because people are still trying to sort out which of the various scenarios is going to be the one that they can begin to plan to. But what I'm encouraging people to do is at least have one person in the organization thinking about scenario or horizon 3 and beyond. And I was, somebody mentioned earlier, there's a lot of webinar activity going on right now. I was on one yesterday, and the facilitator talked about people and organizations are either going to come out of this stronger and better than they were before, or they're going to come out of this weaker and possibly not in business any longer, 12 to 18 months from now. And so those who are doing some longer term planning now are going to increase the chance that they're in that former group rather than the latter. So next slide, please. I'm sure some of you have seen this model before, but people go through change at different speeds, and some have more loss in productivity than others. And that's what these lines are here to indicate. Is first indication of a change, whether it's communication or a rumor, productivity tends to dip, and then people come back out and they enter back into the comfort security zone. And a lot of it depends on the impact of the change and the personal impact of that change. And you think about it today, everyone, or really almost everyone's going through a lot of significant personal change. Their personal life has been upended. They're oftentimes working from home, or their business has really been impacted. I was thinking about my dentist the other day in his practice. And then they've got their organization change that's taking place as well. And some are kind of like battleships with a big hole in the side. And so once they get the people well, then they have to go repair that hole before they can even start to get back underway. And then once they're back underway, they have to figure out, am I going on a different course than I was before? So what I'm encouraging people to do is to step back and prioritize the changes you're working on, because everybody's working on a number of them, and then use some formal change management approach. I was certified in a couple of them 15 years ago, and so I've got one that's really easy for me to explain that I tend to use with clients. And it starts by explaining the why. So regardless of what the change is, whether I want you to stop smoking, whether I want you to start working from home in a different fashion, whether I want you to use a new tool, it always starts with explaining the why and the business case. And this is where change often goes wrong. Most of my clients are executives in their organizations, and the change goes wrong because the person leading the organization doesn't do a good job of explaining why. They attend a kickoff meeting, they give a speech, and then they're no longer involved. And so the people who are doing the best at driving and moving change are those that stay engaged, continue to talk to people. And I think the idea of connecting with the people through electronic tools is perfect, because you can explain the business case, you can answer questions directly, and it gets the executive and the leader much more involved in a sponsorship role. So after you explain the why, you need to explain the WIFM, the what's in it for me. So it'd be like if I went to my doctor and my doctor told me that my cholesterol level was sky high and I needed to change my diet. So I'd say, okay, understand the need for change. And if he said, you're not going to live more than 6 months unless you change your eating habits, then all of a sudden I understand the WIFM, the what's in it for me, and I have a desire to participate in that change. If you go to the next slide, there's a model that I use called ADCAR, and it's all built around the why and the WIFM. And this was developed about 20 years ago by a gentleman by the name of Jeff Hyde. He worked at Bell Labs, and he then formed this think tank around change management. And they publish a change management research paper every 2 years. It started off as a paper, and it's now a volume of 200 or 300 pages. And it's best practices in change management. But his model was ADKAR, ADCAR. So you start with awareness of the need for change, so the why. And then once you're there, you move into desire. So what's in it for me? What's the personal desire I should have to participate in this change? And what so many people, project teams, make mistakes of starting with knowledge. So if I've got a new system I want people to use, the first thing I do is throw them in a class and I start trying to impart knowledge. And I've been in those classes before, and you're sitting there thinking, why do I want to be here? I'm going to continue to use my old tool, my old spreadsheet. I have no awareness, I have no desire, and so not much is going to sink in. But it's kind of like driving a car. I can watch a videotape and I can read a book about driving the car, but I really have no ability until I actually try to drive it. And so once I understand, I have some knowledge, I then have to practice it and have the ability to put that new knowledge into place. And then probably most importantly is reinforcement. Once I'm in that new future state, I have to stay there. So there has to be some reinforcement tool that puts that into place. So in a nutshell, that to me is what change management's all about, and it can be practiced at the individual level. I've got clients that are Fortune 200 clients. They're using this approach in conjunction with project management to drive change. But what I would suggest is all of you, regardless of the size of your organizations, have got some changes you're going to need to make, some forced upon you and some that you can plan over the next few months. And tools like this can help your teams come on board and be highly engaged.
Randy, thank you so much for that. And your expertise has just been invaluable in giving the FlexPaths and all of us that work with you and know you an important perspective, which it isn't about just getting a project started. I love how you said it's the knowledge. It's not just starting in the middle, but really giving people that context so that, and meeting them where they are so that there's buy-in. The other thing that I would say that is so important, and we know we have some insurance companies on the line, LIMRA had indicated that one of the top 3 priorities for life insurance executives is their lack of change leadership competency. And that is something that is before COVID, but now would definitely be, I would think, even asterisked even further or reinforced even more. The fact that change leadership, being prepared for change, whether it's normal change or this kind of unprecedented change, is something that we need to be sure that our executives and leaders are mindful of and that can take people forward. And the last piece I would say, and Randy, you said it well, is that there are companies that are going to do this well and they're going to be remembered for doing it well. And there are others that are going to just skip steps and just get right down to brass tacks, and they're not going to have their people with them. So very, very important part of the conversation is thinking about what Randy said and thinking about how that can be brought into your people and to your projects going forward. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Mel.
Sure. And Kathy, another 10 years plus. I don't think we know each other even how long, but you're always with us. Kathy, let's chat a little bit about company preparedness and planning. I know you've done a lot of webinars and you've just been keeping such a strong pulse. If you could give us some perspectives on this slide and the following, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I've been talking with colleagues and clients and all kinds of people over these last 2 weeks, and I love what Randy was saying about change management, but the one piece that kind of keeps popping up in my mind is we're not managing change, change is managing us right now. And at what point do we get back in control of the situation? You know, we're all responding as best as we can, but we have to tip back into, we have to tip into the next phase. And I kind of looked at this, at the crisis that we're in basically 3 phases. The first is the acute uncertainty. And I feel like we're getting to the end of it. It feels like people are stabilizing. It seems like people have the technology. It does appear work is going forward. And if those of you on the call, you can either drop in chat or unmute yourself, but is it starting to feel a little bit like, okay, I think we got this now, we're going to be able to move forward? Does it feel like that might be where you're at? And Mary, I'm going to pick on you because I know you and I know where you're at. But if you want to unmute yourself and just share, does it seem like at your work, because you've got a big group, does it feel like it's normalizing?
I'm sorry, I've been having some technical difficulties this morning, Kathy.
Oh.
As a matter of fact, I just got out of a meeting that we're starting to plan for re-entering the workplace. So our teams have started, all of our different tracks, all of our change management, the corporate communications, the facilities teams are all trying to come up with what are the touch points that we need to start assessing where we're going to be when and if we are, okayed securely to come back safely for our teams in all of our different locations. And we've got quite a few of them that are remote. So that kind of brings in an additional problem. Of course, we're looking for our leadership to give us the go-ahead and the plan on the timing of it. Originally, we were supposed to be out until May 31st. We're thinking that coming back in is not going to be anywhere near May 31. But, we want to start preparing. We were one of the first, I think, insurance companies to go out and work remotely, and we're probably going to be one of the last to come back in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and better safe than sorry, right? But I think it's great that you guys are already having that conversation, which I think is a key indicator of people going, okay, this happened, and now we have to begin to build. But there's 2, so we're getting past uncertainty, but I think we're moving into a prolonged disruption, and there's a lot of decisions that have to happen during this time. And number 1 is what you're doing, Mary, is starting to have those conversations and determine as an organization, what steps do we need to take to bring people back into the office? And also, what the heck is that going to look like? I think it's very interesting. People, we all know remote work wasn't, some organizations embraced it, some didn't embrace it, some leaders loved it, some leaders hated it. But right now, everybody's doing it. So I'm also very curious to see what is going to happen when people are coming back. And if leadership mandates one thing, but people are having this new experience, and if they're being successful, are they going to be considering that a groundswell of resistance is going to come from, you know, from the front line of the organization and push back? And is that something that you have to prepare for? And I don't know, Mary, if you think that's going to happen, or anyone else on the call who can look forward and say, yeah, I can see it happening, and then preparing everybody, or leadership especially, to respond to that and to, I don't know, be more flexible.
I have to tell you, even the PM on the call this morning, he had to take a good 5 to 10 minutes calming everybody else who was on the call. We were about 30 of us, saying, we're not coming back yet. We're just talking about it. We know everyone is unsettled about the thought of even thinking about coming back to the office and all of the logistical nightmares that that's going to, you know, include. But right now, we need to plan for it, and we need to talk about it, and we need to budget for it. And, you know, we're not moving on it yet. There are a lot of moving parts that we have to, you know, combine. But that was one of the talking points this morning, to try and calm everybody before we even got the discussion started.
Yeah, we've had too much change. You know, we're all drinking from the fire hose. It's just like, oh, don't make me come back. Let me just get used to this brand new normal for another week or so before I start flipping a switch. So just,
Kathy, can I ask a quick question of Mary?
Sure.
Mary, if you don't mind, just who is driving the return to work plan in terms of, you don't have to give names, but is there a particular C-suite individual? Is it the head of HR that's kind of pulling this together? Is it a team of people? Just to get a sense of where this is coming from.
Yeah, Meryl, it was a combined effort this morning. It's the real estate team that started the discussions with facilities. However, you know, Andy and the rest of the ELTs have been on a morning call for the last month or so. Each morning they get together with the executive level, and they have a powwow of 15 minutes discussing what's the most current, you know, top of mind problem. And this was where that particular question generated and started our, you know, ESS team starting to think about the logistics and how many different work streams we would need to involve. And yes, HR is part of that team, and facilities, real estate, and the rest of the shared services are. Yeah. More to come.
Meryl, I can actually second exactly what Meryl said. That's exactly what's happening at Merck too. So it's a group of people, you know, real estate, FM, HR. They've been meeting every day for as long as this crisis has been going on, and the conversations around coming back to the office or going back to the office started probably last week. So we're trying to prepare for that.
Are there any themes coming out of those conversations that you can share or that you have heard? Because I would be curious. Like I said, this whole situation, the biggest thing that we know about it is we don't know anything about it. So I was on with actually another pharmaceutical yesterday, and we were talking about the uncertainty, and we said, just for good measure, we went ahead and made an appointment for 1 year from yesterday. We said, let's just plan a call, and we're going to get back together and find out what the heck is going to happen. So that was a funny best practice.
So,
if you have something,
we have received a flurry of communications or a flurry of emails from our employees asking, are we going back to private offices? Are we raising the panels in the cubicles? Are we assigning seats? So, you know, people are naturally leaning towards what's familiar to them. Like, you know, if I isolate myself, then this is one way to deal with this crisis. However, when we look at objective, how we operate the workplace, probably that's not practical. I don't think that we necessarily are going back to assigning seats or back to private offices. One of the fears is that you start assigning seats and people are going to start piling things up, as we all know that it happens, right? So the real important thing now is to up the cleaning protocols when it comes to workspaces, right? So if we assign people space and they become their tents or their private spaces, then we won't be able to clean as we need to. So that's one of the things that keeps coming up. The other thing that we keep hearing, and it's not necessarily about going back to the office, is, well, you know, I had an ergonomic arrangement at work.
Oh, right.
So I'm working from my, I don't know, living room.
Mm-hmm.
And my back is starting to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually met with EHS yesterday, and we were trying to come up with a plan to, and then there's the other types of requests, like I don't have a medical issue, but I don't have in my house the type of equipment I need to work comfortably.
Right, yeah. And
So
actually,
we're trying to, go ahead.
I was going to say, we have a slide on that after this too, that just talks about what are the obligations of the organization, right?
Right.
And
so we're going through that process of kind of defining that. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So those are the two things that keep coming up.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and like Randy had pointed out, it's all that what's in it for me. That's kind of
right.
That's at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. But if we want to jump to the next slide, I just want to do a quick check-in and see, you know, where is everybody at who is involved in and managing this change, in recovering. So as I said, we're exiting our acute uncertainty. We're moving into a prolonged disruption, I think, for at least 2 months. And then we have to get into the recovery, and the recovery is a roadmap that's got to be built starting today. And I think it's brilliant that these organizations are having conversations at the higher levels, but we also at this time have to start talking with our frontline managers about how do we help the team recover? What are we going to do? And communication is going to be a very big part of this. So it looks like we have, kind of people are having discussions. That's good. Planning is underway. That's terrific. So nobody on the call is sitting around waiting to see what happens. So that's smart. Although I could put a check marks there. Yeah, I'm kind of waiting to see. That's why. But no, it's all about being preemptive and strategic, and remembering that at this time, people they're talking about working from home. Well, everybody's working from home. Well, I want to invite you all to realign your thinking, because you are not working from home. You are at home during a crisis. And while you're at home, you're trying to work. But I think we need to flip it a little bit and understand we are not working from home. We are at home during a crisis, and we're doing our best to manage all that we have to do. So anyways, that's all I've got to say about that.
Can I ask Kathy, can you take a quick photo of this?
Okay.
Wonderful, because I love it. And I think what we want to do is we'll ask it again next week and see where the arrow go, where the choices go. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. All
right. I will erase and I will proceed. So Alex, you must have seen the slide deck. So that's good. You're making me look smart, which doesn't happen very often. So I was appreciating it. So I am not, full disclosure, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a compliance officer, but I was monitoring and hearing some conversations around what types of remote work issues that normally would be very light in discussion are now intensifying. And Alex, you hit the nail right on the head. It's a couple of things. It's the reasonable accommodations. So the example that I heard was, you have an employee with a vision impairment, and the computer that he or she has is inadequate to perform her work. So now she either needs some kind of a device to put over the screen, or needs a double monitor or a larger screen. And how is that going to be handled? Who pays for it? How does the conversation get teed up? What does the employer or employee do? And really, it's about having, I think, what we're hearing, it's about having a conversation to see what kind of accommodation really is needed, and what is the company's stance on this. And I've heard two things, and Kathy and I had a conversation before this webinar started. There are some companies that are saying, hey, that's your issue. And with the understanding that, you're not dry cleaning your clothes, you're not commuting, so dig into your pocket. And then you have other companies that are saying, it's a small amount of money, and it's the goodwill that it's going to provide to our people in terms of reputation and productivity is ridiculously off the charts, and it's going to pay back in dividends.
Yeah, the ROI.
So, right. Right. So again, no criticism of whatever you're all doing, but it's two ways of thinking about it. And of course, getting ahead of these is important because it's better to be proactive than reactive. So the reasonable accommodation of what your position is on this, if it is changed from normal course of business, it's good to let people know.
Mm-hmm.
Injuries and safety is another one. Again, people going from their home, part of their place where they live, to the place that they work. They trip on a wire, they fall down the steps, God forbid, they twist an ankle. What does that mean? Is the employer liable? How does that get looked at in terms of OSHA and workers' comp? And again, the thoughts and information we're getting is that does not necessarily constitute an injury that the company has to pay for, but claims could come. So again, being very clear, do your employees have workers' comp? Again, being very clear on that, or being ready to be responsive on that, is important. The longer workday, we all know, and we hear the statistics that people who work from home pre-COVID often are more productive. They work longer hours. Maybe they're not aware of the boundary setting that they need to have in their workday. Non-exempt employees, having to track their hours. So again, being mindful of those non-exempts and being sure they're clocking in and out is important. And then the last piece that's important is the protecting of confidential information. Again, none of these are new, but some of these are nuanced because we had to run out of the office quickly, right? And maybe we didn't get all the information out to our people about confidential information, if they're using their own devices, if they're printing information. Now their spouse is working in the home, and that person bluntly could be working for a competitor. You have things on the desk that maybe are being left. Whatever, you could think of different scenarios, I'm sure, but again, being mindful to reinforce and remind your employees about protecting that information and what your company is expecting. So a little update on that certainly wouldn't hurt. So Kathy, I know we chatted. Any other comments on that, or thoughts that you've been hearing from your colleagues?
Well, I'm hearing that communication clarity is perhaps a little mushy inside some organizations. And I think that you said it correctly, Meryl, when you said whatever your decision is, it just articulate it so clearly, because I believe in our lovely and litigious society that there is going to be a whole bunch of attorneys just starving at the end of this who are going to say, let's dig into what happened inside people's homes when they were not working from home, but working from home. So I don't know. I think there's tremendous risk out there. And so the sooner organizations can be as clear as possible with these possible, pitfalls, the better off that they're going to be.
Absolutely. And I think, if the other thing is that for people who, again, rushed to go home and never had work from home, people didn't know how to set up a home office. So in all fairness and deference to them, they just didn't know what they don't know, right? They don't know about the ergonomic chair. They don't know about the lighting. They don't know about this or that. I have one situation where the person doesn't even have the ability to sign contracts. Because he never worked from home and he doesn't even know how to digitize. Again, we're not, we're in a new place right now. So there's a very different way that people are working, using their technology, home offices. And so all these different things that were natural in the office, again, we need to be rethinking them a bit more.
True.
Silver lining, we always like to end, okay, we have 3 or 4 minutes left, and of course we'll take any final questions, but we always like to end on a silver lining, and these are the things that we thought of as a silver lining. Anything you all want to add in the chat while I'm mentioning this, so we can all celebrate something positive in the chat, please feel free to add it. But the first one is really this trend that we're seeing on prioritization on upskilling and practice management. Companies, again, realizing that while they have people that maybe are not at capacity, or that they could be and are normally upskilling in the fourth quarter, moving that to now and giving them opportunities to learn new things, take new courses, again, strengthen their competencies, reshare the competency models with their employees, reminding them what the competencies are and what can they be doing now to continue to align with them is a brilliant move, and certainly gives people empowerment. So if you have employees, again, who maybe aren't full capacity, having them be upbeat and positive by taking advantage of the e-learning and the other types of skills that they can take advantage of at your firm and companies is really, really great and really important and very positive. We talked about recognition before. I would underline that. The silver lining here is, how can we create new ways of making people feel good? And how do we test them now? How do we create those good feelings that people can, and managers can take those new ideas and do them? I think it's really, really an important opportunity. And again, thinking about recognition, as Liz mentioned, it's not it's not one size fits all. Recognition means different things to different people based on their function, their role, their generation, and how do we test some things and see how they work and how they're received. And again, engagement. Oftentimes people just didn't see the engagement program as something that's investable. We're seeing now that it is investable because we want to be sure that we have our people with us and aligned with us and creating the most positive employee experience possible given the trying times. Anyone want to add anything in the chat that's what they think would be a silver lining? We would love to hear from you. If not, final moments here. We'd always like to end with something that we give you back for your time and your friendship and your being part of our network and attending today. These are some, we call them relevant reads and resources, and we kind of scan and see things that are interesting. So again, this Forbes article on leadership in a time of COVID-19 is excellent. I would definitely recommend that. I put that at the top. Something here about change is a necessity. Another one that's really great that talks about change management and communication and how to look at it differently. The one on the discomfort you're feeling is grief is just a very, very straight article about the fact that we are in a time of grief, and it's okay to say it and okay to feel it and okay to understand and recognize it. Upskilling, a couple of ideas here, and then Randy supplied this 1-minute video on change management. We are going to be sending this slide deck to everyone. We will also send a recording, put a recording up of it, and we will also get back to you on our next session. So I want to thank everyone. I want to end on time. Thank you on behalf of Liz and Kathy and myself for being so great and being with us.
Thanks, everyone.
We will share our next session with you. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah.
Thank you all and stay safe.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you.
And happy holidays to everyone who observes. Happy Easter, happy Passover to anyone who observes. All of you have a great week and a great weekend. Bye-bye.
You too.
Stay
Bye.
well. Bye-bye.